Guys, what's up? This is the McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, as always, Coleman McAllister, doing another super solo episode today. We do have some guests lined up for the next couple weeks, but I had to come in solo and kind of just talk about some of the craziness that's been going on locally in Iowa. Yes, I think we're just going to dedicate a whole episode to talking about three or four major things that have been going on. Because it's really easy to talk about what's happening with Trump or Doge or anything. I think everybody's focusing on that, right? So I think when things happen in Iowa and you look around and you don't really see there are plenty of other podcasts in Iowa. Don't get me wrong, and I could just be misinformed, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of focus on current events. So if that's something that I can bring to the table, I would like to do that. So yeah, this is what we do. If you guys haven't already, please hit subscribe. Consider checking out the Patreon. As I said, when we're going to get some guests in here in the next couple weeks, we will be doing Patreon content with them, hopefully. So, you can look forward to that. Okay. The first major thing that I thought we would talk about today. So as I'm I'm not sure if this is going to go up today as I'm recording it the next day, but Tuesday morning as I'm recording this, it looks like the GOP is, according to this article, fast tracking a bill that ends trans civil rights protections. And this is a pretty big deal yesterday because there was a huge protest at the Capitol. I didn't see a ton of it on social media, but one of the pages I do follow, Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers, who the president, Jason Bennell, I've had on the podcast before, they were posting quite a bit about it. I think the vice president of the group was there. I'd like to get him on the podcast, honestly. But he was there kind of protesting, and he was kind of, I was kind of just getting live updates from that. Kind of throughout the day at work. So it was interesting. I guess before we get into the whole trans civil rights as a whole, in terms of what happened at the Capitol and the protest, I think one of the more egregious things that happened there was it looks like two people were arrested. And this is, I think before we even get into any what we're going to talk about today, I think that alone is such a huge signifier as to just how purely corrupt our state government really is. The fact that people are in a public building that their taxpayer dollars pay for or stolen for, however you want to phrase it. And they're protesting. They're protesting something that they believe is wrong, and they're arrested in a building for that, in a public building. And it, non-violently too. I mean, I guess I don't know specifically. I don't know if these people that were arrested were assaulting an officer. Regardless, it doesn't matter really, in my opinion. There's just no reason these people should have been arrested. So I thought that was one of them. This is the thing about government, right? For all the supposed credit that people give government and secrecy and all that, they really don't deserve that much credit, in my opinion. When they fuck up pretty blatantly. Even the day and age of 2025, right? You would think that these governments would be, they would watch one science fiction movie and been like, oh, okay, maybe we could do this kind of is there a way, you would think that there'd be a way they could coordinate it, right? So people wouldn't know this kind of stuff. But I mean, it just shows the power of people and the power of social media and how, weak the government really is. When these things happen and we can see them in plain view, and we can, if a protester is getting arrested, we can just pull out our phone and witness that, right? So I thought that let's just do this. Let's watch. I haven't seen this before, so let's just watch this clip about from KCCI. All right, we're back. My apologies, guys. When you're playing the producer and the host, you get some curveballs thrown at you, so I apologize for that. So that's one guy getting arrested. Looks like they removed at least 4 people. Arrested 2. Yeah, just truly egregious behavior on part of both the Iowa government and the Iowa State Patrol. So yeah, just awful shit. But I guess let's just talk about like the whole thing with trans civil rights for a second, and kind of just my thoughts and feelings about this. I guess first of all, I will say it does seem like it is clear over the last week or so that the government is targeting this kind of stuff, this kind of LGBTQ stuff. As an anarchist, ultimately, I don't believe that the government has a right to come in and tell people that they should, not identify as something or whatever. I just think that's crazy. That being said, I don't necessarily think that what's going on is that per se. Here's an article I want to read. It's from Iowa Public Radio. Bill would remove protections from transgender Iowans from the Iowa Civil Rights Act. Now, I'll show this real quick. And now I look at that article. I look at that headline, and the thing that comes out to me the most is protections. This idea of a protected class. And I think if anybody understands libertarianism, understands anarchism, maybe not libertarians, but anarchism for sure, their rights don't really exist. Civil rights don't really exist in that worldview. Civil rights it's just a byproduct of government. I mean, really, it's not even really true. Like, it almost keeps that category in like a container. I almost like to think of it as a container, right? Because like, look at it this way: white people don't have civil rights, right? And like white people don't really need it. I mean, nobody really needs it, but white people especially don't need it. I mean, I'm willing to admit that for a large portion of them. There are very poor white people. I've met them. I've known them. But like, do they need to be in a protected class? No. And in extension to that, I would say the same. If black civil rights were on the table for this, I would say the same thing. Like, yes, there's obviously a targeted approach from the government, and that is sad and unfortunate. But I think people will hear something like that, and they will immediately take an emotional stance on it. They will immediately get upset without even really understanding what that means. What does it actually mean to remove civil rights from trans people? And now let's scroll down. They kind of, because the thing that a lot of people are obviously upset about this. The quote I've seen over and over again is, "This is the worst bill we have ever seen come out of the Iowa. This is the worst bill we've seen." Where's that quote? Sorry. "This is the worst bill we have ever seen come out of the Iowa legislature, and that is a high bar," Mowat said. I don't know what Mowat says. So, okay, but let's look at what this actually means right here. Transgender women would be barred from women's bathrooms, locker rooms, domestic violence shelters, prisons, rape crisis centers, and more. So here's the thing, and yes, I think another aspect of that too is that the genders are officially male and female. One of the things about the LGBTQ and transgender movement that in the early days I always kind of admired, actually, was like it just seemed like it did, like, people people in that movement have obviously wanted civil rights. I think like any group has. But there was also like an enormous sense of individualism that came from these groups. Like in my mind, I think people are giving the whole idea of the male and female legal status way more power than it is. Yes, I understand that like that might like for this government paper you're gonna have to write male or female, and I don't know. I guess like ultimately I just don't really care. Like it's just about something like that, because like you can go write male or female on your driver's license and also just be like, hey, I'm trans, I'm whatever, I identify as this. Nobody can really take that away from you. The government, they can't actually take that away from you. It might feel like they're taking that away from you. That might be the environment, and I can understand why people would feel like that. But like ultimately, at the end of the day, nobody's really doing that. Now, okay, they would be barred from women's bathrooms, locker rooms. So let's just focus on those first two things. I think there is an argument that if you have a little kid with you in a public bathroom and someone who is biologically the other sex, no matter what their appearance is or how they present themselves or whatever, walking into the bathroom is uncomfortable. And I can clearly understand why at a school or a government building, why parents would be upset by that. If I had a kid, I would be upset with the idea of that. So again, I just, again, I think this is just something that the alternate route for this is the private sector. If you don't like the fact that there are only 2 bathrooms now or something, like if the government's mandating that, because here's another thing, right? Like I think the thing about this that is positive is that they are not breaching the private sector. I do think, well, they did remove the discrimination stuff, which again, I don't believe that like there should be laws for discrimination. I think that's a conversation for another day. But if there's a business that doesn't want to hire trans people, don't go work for that business. I mean, that, I don't know. I sound like an arrogant ass when I'm saying this kind of stuff, but like the responses are very simple in my mind. Okay, the government isn't acknowledging you, then don't participate in the government. That's when you say, fuck the government. I'm not gonna, like, that's when you stop voting. That's when you stop giving it power. That's when you start looking more towards, okay, I'm gonna find, or if it's not there, I'm gonna start a local private business that is gonna cater to trans, that is gonna cater to the LGBTQ status. If you want to say create safe space, fine. You want to do that for people. All the power to you. You don't need this government thing to do that. And this is why, like, this is why I don't find myself so opposed to this. Let's look at the Black civil rights and how that's played out over the last 80 years. You now have a black elite. And not only are they an elite, they're a protected class. I mean, if you add those two things together, that's communism in practice. That's the Bolshevik revolution. That's saying Group A is or has been oppressed by Group B. So then Group B is going to do everything in their power to eliminate Group A. That is always the trajectory that goes down. So every time there's a protected class, I get that red flag in my head. I get that red flag where I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that there's a protected class. So, okay, so there's that. So going back to this quote, or what rights are being taken away. Domestic violence shelters, prison, rape crisis centers, and more. Now, those three things, that's a tricky issue, right? Because I can see especially in the first and the last one, how it seems like you're taking away something from that group of people. But again, there are private options. There can be a privatized option for people of LGBTQ status. And actually, the problem that I'm going to allude to here, that would actually solve a lot of that problem. Here's a big thing that's happening with the trans stuff that people aren't willing to talk about. The increase in rape cases when someone who is biologically male and identifies as woman goes to these centers for women that where it's a majority of women who are biologically made female. Now, you can say that those people are whatever gender, right? The fact is, in that case specifically, the organs matter. The sexual organs matter. The fact that one person has a penis and one person has a vagina, in terms of rape or sexual assault, that matters. I'm sorry. That doesn't make me a bigot. That doesn't make me an asshole. That makes me a logical fucking person. You can say that, oh, that person's a woman. They still got a fucking dick. And when you're in prison, that's a free for all. That's a free for all. If you have a penis and there are a room full of women with vaginas who have no protection, everybody, I don't have to be the first one to explain how much of a hellhole prison is. These people don't have protection. And the domestic violence, and that goes for the domestic violence shelters and the rape crisis centers. I mean, yeah, they're not entrapped there, but they're kind of, when that same entity, that same government that creates a system that makes people poor, when they then give that option, oh, this is what we're going to do for poor people, it almost creates the same problems that are in the prisons, right? Where it's, people don't have proper protection, and these people are going to come in, they're going to take advantage of that system. And that's the part that's really the overarching thing with the trans thing that nobody really ever wants to talk about, is that with these quote unquote protections, these civil protections, people are going to take advantage of that. You don't have to look further than Bill, I think it's C-16 out in Canada. That's kind of back from more 2016, but that was I think it's still enacted today. I could be wrong, but that is a bill where people are able to get, you're allowed to fire people based on not adhering to someone's trans stuff. And this is kind of a bigger part of the picture. This is a bigger part of the problem that I have, not that people's identities as being LGBTQ, but the movement as a whole for LGBTQ, is there is an authoritarian bent. There is this authoritarian bent where people want to authoritarianly tell people, hey, this is how I identify, and you have to call me that. I would be willing to bet out of the people who identify as that and who want that, it's over 50% of that group who would be more than happy to make people say that, make people say their pronoun. Whereas the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist train of thought for that would be, privatize it. Hey, if someone's not fucking with me, if I'm trans, right? I'm not, but if I was trans and somebody didn't believe that, I'd be like, well, okay, go fuck yourself. I'm not gonna associate with you at that point. Why are you gonna force it? This is the same. It's like the gay wedding cake. Why are you going to force people to abide by that? Why don't you just let the private sector play itself out? That was a perfect example of why capitalism worked, or morality and capitalism worked. I think it was over a decade ago, the gay wedding cake, where there was a couple, I don't know where, refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. And what happened? They went out of business. If you were against those people, that's the best scenario that you can get. They lost their livelihood. What more do you need to do at that point? But that's the thing. When these people are like, oh, hey, we need to do more and more and more, there's something power hungry about that. So when something like the Iowa state government has that power play along with it, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of, I don't have that much remorse. Like I do, but at the same time, I think people just need to actually step back. How is this really going to affect my life? They're not closing down, gay nightclubs. They're not telling people that they can't be gay. They're simply just removing these protected rights, which nobody should have. So I'm not necessarily going to say it's a step in the right direction. I think that's a stretch because this is still targeted in a sense. But if I'm gonna say no protections versus protections, I'm gonna lean no protection every time. And I think this is actually one like similar to like abortion, right? Like I think this is actually gonna be one of those scenarios where people have more of a say in what they're able to do, more freedom in that than they would think otherwise. Okay, guys, we're back. God, taking a shit in the middle of the podcast, I swear, it's one of the worst things. Really throws you off. All right. Another thing I wanted to talk about that happened, I think, over the weekend. Was pretty crazy. So there was this. They're calling it a white supremacist. An extremist group called Patriot Front. They were spotted marching in downtown Des Moines. Let's play this clip.
The physicians.
Actually, let's not do that. So they were seen marching Saturday just afternoon downtown Des Moines. And I saw a bunch of this on social media. They are apparently a far right group created out of Texas, which I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know. This is, obviously I don't support white supremacy at all. I think it's a stupid and evil ideology. I think some things that people, ultimately at the end of the day, I do think that they have a right to do, this, right? Like they have a right to protest and to speak their piece or whatever. They are doing it on public roads, right? Which I don't like the idea of, but like at least like they weren't like going into businesses and stuff, right? Like that could have gotten violent really quick. At least they, were respectable enough. I can't talk. That shit really threw me off, guys. At least they're respectable enough not to do that. However, I think this is just kind of this cycle right here. This is the reason that government continues to be as prevalent as it is. Because this is a reaction. When you see these like groups, these, especially in, the last 5-10 years, when you see the rise of these right extremist groups, there's usually a reason for that. It's a reaction. It's a reaction to the problem. This, and it's not, I guess it hasn't really even been that prevalent in Iowa, but just in the world in general, right? Like this, for lack of a better term, this woke shit, right? And, I think people, like people say that it's, like harmless, but I was talking earlier about the authoritarian angle of it. I don't know. And, just we're going to get to this in a sec, but like the weird obsession with kids at the drag stuff. I think there's definitely plenty of aspects. Let's just say this. There's plenty of aspects to that movement, the woke movement, that is worthy of raising some eyebrows. So I guess my whole point with this is I think this is a reaction, and when people back these, politically charged groups, or they back groups that are wanting to use the government as a tool, this is going to be the result. Like if you're going to see more woke stuff, you're going to see more of this. You're going to see more of this, you're going to see more woke stuff, etc. And this is just like, this is the constant cycle that government keeps us in. Good group, bad group, flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. So, there isn't really a way to combat this. The only way you can really combat it is doing like what I'm doing, right? Letting people know, letting people be aware. I do think it'd be kind of interesting to interview these guys. I know. Look, I know that sounds crazy, but look, I've reached out to groups like Black Lives Matter, in Des Moines Black Lives Matter. I would love to, I should try to reach out to some kind of LGBTQ Des Moines front. I'd love to interview them. And I would be curious to interview these guys to see if there is some non-extremist point of view to why they're doing this. Let me look at this other article, but I don't think anybody really. Let's just do this quick. Let's watch a video of what actually happened here. So yeah, they had the 13 colonies flags. So I guess that's racist. And they're all masked.
Reclaim America! Reclaim America!
About 24 people. So if there's a positive in any of this, it was smaller than the people at the Capitol, right? So that should at least be comforting, right? Like there's only 24-ish people here marching, and in the Capitol there was like 100 plus. So in the area at least they're outnumbered, so that's good. Yeah, people are idiots, man. This is kind of just what this is. This is just people being fucking jackasses. So yeah, Patriot Front. It would be funny if they had like a Twitter page or something. Let's actually look this up really quick. Patriot Front Des Moines group. Yeah, they probably won't tell me on Google. I wonder what their website is. Again, if you can find it. Oh, this is just. Yeah, this is all just the info about it. Okay, here we go. Here's the fucking. Here are the people reclaiming America. The revival of American Revolution spirit will guide the people towards an inalienable right to self-determination on the course to fulfill their destiny. America will be unshackled from tyrannical rule. The corrupt and ineffective state which subverts the natural interest to form a global plutocracy is no longer legitimate to govern and must face alteration or abolition. An unwavering resistance will meet all enemies of the people and the nation, both foreign and domestic. The liberty of our people, paramount to our cause, will be secure. And that's kind of the weird thing, right? Is it because I was curious about this group? I was like, that right there. I can't necessarily disagree with that. I don't want that to be done through a violent means, but I would 100% want some kind of divorce from the government or just liberty of the people, right? Like that alone is a great message, right? However, if there is some kind of racist shit, I think that's kind of the problem when you have this DEI stuff. Again, with what we were just talking about, like with the woke and the alt-right, right? Like you set up this DEI thing in government, and then there's going to be a reaction to that, and then that's why I always say these protected classes, it ends up hurting them more than anyone, because then the reverse of that is, now we're going to discriminate against DEI people or LGBTQ people, and obviously that's not good, right? Because then you're taking people who are innocent in that, who aren't trying to be authoritarian, who literally are they just feel this way and they just want to be that way, then they're going to be targeted as well. So that's problematic. That's the thing, I'm not seeing anything necessarily racist or that signifies that they're white supremacists Let's read this. Let's read this one. The faith of the nation will foster social, moral, and civilizational health, which will allow the people to prosper along the guidance of a representative state that ensures an existence for them and their posterity. No placement of the private interest above that of the common good will stand unopposed as the barriers impeding the nations will all overcome. Sovereignty will be pursued with the securing of American homeland against the invasion of foreign nations and interests. The victory of the American spirit upheld by the sovereign and legitimate state will be complete. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of the sovereignty will be pursued with the securing of the American homeland against the invasion of foreign nations and interests. I mean, that's very authoritarian in nature. So that's a little concerning. More than a little, I guess. See, here's the thing. They have a manifesto. How long is this? Too damn long. Okay. Well, they do have a manifesto. I don't know. Maybe that's something worth deep diving later. But you get the point. This is the result. This is just basically the result of government. There's always there's always something for that. Okay. Before we get to the drag stuff, I just want to talk about this quick thing with Kim Reynolds, Governor Kim Reynolds has introduced a bill to restrict cell phones in schools, prioritizing learning and mental health. So, today, Governor Kim Reynolds released a bill to restrict students' cell phone use during instructional time. The bill establishes a floor or a minimum standard that all Iowa school districts will be required to adopt by July 1st of 2025. Okay. I really hate this. Despite my, other loathe and contempt for our governor. I just think this is a very dangerous precedent. Anytime, as you know, as the people who listen to this regularly know, I'm opposed to these kind of things where the government says, okay, we're gonna take people's private property, their devices, and we're gonna restrict that. And I've always found there to be a very good argument for cell phone use. Being able to have your cell phone in class. First of all, I think this just shows how devalued education is, right? Like, because these people know that all the phones that are in their students' pockets would massacre them like tenfold in terms of who's a better educator. Like, the technology is going to win every time. Like, I've always been a proponent of this. Like, when Trump gutted the Department of Education, I was rooting for that because it's a shit system. It's an irrelevant system. It's a system that is 30 years outdated. Everybody should be learning to code. Everybody should be learning to navigate the internet and the cell phone, and not be doing this just historic, like dinosaur age approach at this point of sitting in a classroom for 42 hour or whatever a day and having this teacher write things on the chalkboard or the marker board even if they're pulling up stuff on the computer, right? Like, there's just no competition. There's no competition which is better. So when you see something like this being passed, it's clearly the government signaling to the people that they understand that they don't have the value that they propose to have, especially with the cost of schools, the universities, all that. Like, there's so much on the stake. There's so much at stake that they can't admit to the fact that this technology is just going to it's going to take over everything in 20 years anyway. So it's what's even the point trying to hang on to this? Also, I mean, I think the more malevolent thing with this happening is it gives people less protection again for themselves, like the kids. Like, if there's a teacher, acting a certain way that's really inappropriate, you're taking away their accountability, because a kid being able to record that, like, even if something is happening, they do manage to get a recording of it. It's going to be like, oh, well, you weren't supposed to have your phone, so da 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 da, and they're going to just side with the educator because that's in their best interest. Or, school shootings, right? Because, these schools aren't going to take the necessary precautions to have armed security in those public schools. So so you're already leaving these students with no protection. And then to take away their cell phone, which could be used A, for evidence, and B, to contact someone, to contact the police or contact their parents, if worst case scenario, if death is imminent for them, right? Like, wouldn't that be good for them to have a cell phone? And with this bill, I don't exactly know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that just means they can still have it in their pockets, or if if it's like a bin thing where they have to collect them. That would be, really bad. I think that I would be very critical of that. So, like everything with, when these bills are being introduced, we're just going to have to wait and see. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk about today before we wrap up, that has people stirred up, is, the banning of Drag Story Hour, and banning of bringing a minor to a drag show, which is now going to be considered a felony. Which I will say, of everything that is here that we're going to talk about with this, that's definitely the most egregious, is the fact that it's a felony. I was debating my fiance about this, kind of, and not even debating, we were just discussing it. I was kind of like, well, I don't really super have a problem with it, because, as a parent, you shouldn't bring your kids to a strip club either. So because we're gonna watch a couple videos here, I will see how much I can get through. We're gonna watch a couple different videos here of both at DragCon, which is the number one event for drag, and just other individual events, instances of drag people being very inappropriate around kids. But despite that, we were talking, and I'm like, I bet it's a felony to bring your kid to a strip club, and it's actually not. It's a misdemeanor. So you can get in. I don't even think this is in Iowa. I think this is. It could just be in Iowa, but I think it's for sure in Iowa. I think federally though too. Is a misdemeanor to do that. So when I read that, I'm like, okay, well then they're overstepping their bounds a little bit, right? Okay, it's a felony to bring a kid to a drag show, but not a strip club. Yeah, okay, there's obviously something kind of fucked up about that. So I don't think it should be a felony by any means. I think that's ridiculous. However, despite the degree of punishment, I just don't. Again, this is just something I don't really care about. I don't have kids. I got my vasectomy, so I'm not going to have kids. So I either way, I don't really know. I don't know anybody that's trans. And that's not true. I know. I do know people who are trans. I don't see, I don't know, but I don't see them being necessarily really up in arms about this. I could be wrong. I don't know. But this is just, I guess just plainly saying that, to me, this is just kind of a non-issue, in my mind. That being said, a lot of people are upset about it. So I thought I would comment on that. Look, at the end of the day, people know, I don't like government being involved in parents' decisions. That being said, I think there's a line in morality that most people in society can agree upon. And I think bringing your child to a sexually charged show, or to a show containing nudity, or a movie containing nudity, or to Hooters, I think that's wrong. I think a lot of people would look at that and think that that's wrong. For the mere fact that kids, under the age of 13, 14, there's just really no reason why they need to be learning about sexuality or talking about sexuality. Like when you see these videos of like 5-6-year-olds getting on stage and twerking and like just like explaining to them about sex, I just don't even understand why that needs to be talked about at that age. Again, I don't have kids, so I don't know personally, but like just from my own childhood, like if someone had told me all that when I was 6, like it just wouldn't even clicked for me. Like even my early porn exposure when I was like 8 or 9, which is really damaging to me. And that's almost kind of part of why I, do kind of understand some of the concern about this. Is like there are cases of at these drag story hours, like children being shown like pornographic images, pornographic illustrations about stuff. And I think it's entirely within a parent's. I think it's entirely right for a parent to say, hey, I don't want my kid to be exposed to that. I think that's totally fine. I don't have a problem with that. And despite being an anarchist, I think when the government moves in a direction that is positive, it's important to acknowledge that. And I do think that not allowing your kid to go to these shows is positive. The same as if they said, hey, you can't take your kid under 18 into a bar. Like I'm not talking like a family restaurant. I'm talking about like a dive bar. There's only a bar. There's like a couple tables, but everybody's just getting shit faced. If they pass a law like, hey, you can't bring your kid there, I'm not gonna bitch about that, because I can detest and object to the fact that that's being implemented. But like also, that's not like a bad thing, right? Like it's not bad that it's illegal to kill people. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's bad. Like, yes, like people shouldn't be killing people, so that is a good thing. But I find I find it ridiculous. Like when people are just gonna look at the fact that, oh hey, like at the service value of it, like, oh hey, this is targeting trans people, and it probably is to an extent. But again, like, what is really happening here? All that's really, I mean, they're not saying that people can't be trans. Although I think in the federal context, I don't think you can be anymore. But again, like I always use this analogy, like if you're gonna work for the mob and the mob does something fucked up, I don't really care. Like you're working for the mob. Yeah, like you've already decided your fate there, right? Like if like federal employees are being subjected to something, I'm like, okay, then don't be a federal employee. It's as simple as that. But okay, let's just pause here and just watch some of these clips, because I think this is kind of an important thing to show people. And this isn't me like being what, I don't even know how to say it, like whatever, but this is probably the worst one right here that I've seen. Right here. But let's just play some of these videos and just show what kind of things are really happening. I'm not 100% sure. I think this is at DragCon. I'm not actually sure, but it might be. Oh, this doesn't have sound. So it's a drag performer literally just doing a stripper dance. Like going on the ground, spreading her legs. His legs, whatever. Splitting them and then doing like a sexual pose, sticking the ass out. And there's literally a child facing his back to that. Like there's literally a child in the shot that looks like 5 years old. I don't know how I'm sorry. I don't know how somebody can watch that and still be on board with this stuff. Still be on board with the Drag Story Hour. I'm not saying that every Drag Story Hour is like this. However, it's like the Catholic Church. If there's some fucking weird shit going on, maybe you should look at the whole thing. Maybe you should look at the whole picture. If there was a Starbucks, if there was one Starbucks location, one, that did anything remotely like this to kids, people would stop going to Starbucks. They'd be like, what the fuck? Starbucks is doing, like, even if this happened in one store, that would taint the entire brand, right? But for drag, because it's part of the LGBTQ community, because in the trans community, because it's not like, it's totally, nothing ever bad could come out of that community. When we see when people see stuff like this, they just turn the other way. It's the same thing as Catholics. When you tell Catholics about, like, oh, hey, this is how many people have been abused, this is how many children have been abused, they will literally look the other way. They will, like, I've seen it in real time. I remember I was sitting with my father one time, and he was watching the news about how the Pope had responded to so many sexual scandals, and he just turned it off. At the minute sexual scandal came up, boop, turn it off. Nope. Not going to take that information in because it goes against my ideology. And I think that's just one of the saddest things about the day and age we live in. And I personally, I always try to be someone who, who's not on that, who tries to be open-minded and stuff. But here, let's just watch a couple more of these just to get kind of a picture. Because again, I think, again, it's easy to say, like, oh, this happens one time. But I have, like, it took me like 20 minutes to find like 8 different videos of just stuff that's just, he's a little older, sure. Shaking the ass. And just sexualized clothing. And like they're taking tips like a stripper. Like, I'm sorry. It's just fucking ridiculous. All right, let's just do one more. Oh, I don't care about that one. That's like the kid who wants to be drag performer. So this is a girl. Not necessarily sexualized, I will say. This is more just kind of a dance routine, but still kind of sticking the ass out a little bit. And yeah, that's sexual. Okay, I forgot about that part. And that's the thing. This stuff makes me uncomfortable, man. Like, this. You remember that movie Cuties that came out? How everybody was so pissed about Cuties for a good reason. And then this happens and nothing. It's a fucked up world we live in, people. That's really all I want to talk about today. I kind of wanted to keep it Iowa focused, like I said. I think I'm gonna really try to record an episode later this week talking about some of the stuff that's going on with Doge, RFKs, wellness farms, and shit like that. Kind of giving my take on that. Thought that'd be interesting. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry for the shit break. It happens, this coffee, man, it fucking goes through me, especially when I take an Adderall on, like, which is not, I shouldn't be taking Adderall on coffee, but my heart's going to give out someday, but that's okay. I gotta get through this bullshit somehow. All right, everybody, have yourselves a good night. Enjoy yourselves. Catch you next time. Peace.